Hidden Object Guru here, joined by...
The Unabridged Game.
To talk what's easily a top 10 game of 2019. And I would argue easily top 5. I would say best, but I know you're going to disagree with me on that. I would call it the best licensed game I've ever played. I know there are a bunch of Alien Isolation people out there who would disagree with me, and I know you have your own feelings that you're going to stress as we go through this, but let me just say the name of the game, Terminator Resistance.
It is absolutely one of the top 5 licensed tie-in games. For those who don't know, I actually ended up in a darn foolish thing where I was reviewing almost exclusively licensed tie-in games for like a solid year. It was called Clash of the Tie-Ins, and
he played everything. Whether he got around to reviewing them or not, he played everything.
I have a copy of Shrek 2 for Xbox, people. Let it never be said that I won't do extraneous things for my audience.
Oh my god. Wow. Well,
people are still asking for more, so you might be seeing more of those in the future, but regardless...
I forgot to ask, did you ever get a copy of Wolverine?
I have a copy. I got your copy. That is one of the ones that absolutely I want to get, dude. That's one of the ones that came in right at the tail end of my 2019 getting absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Fun fact, if people who we'll get to Terminator in a second, the best Marvel game is Wolverine, like the one based on the Wolverine Origins movie, but the second best is the one you covered, which was magnificent, is Captain America.
Captain America Super Soldier.
We're
really giving you an idea about how much we've given more of a crap about most licensed tie-in games than almost any other type of person talking about this sort of stuff.
We take this more seriously than we probably should.
But, sometimes they're really fun. And I will say without a doubt that Terminator Resistance is easily one of the best ones that has come out. There's a few things that I know some people wanted differently, but I will also say that I think critics were really mean to this one for basically no good reason.
It's like I saw the early critical reaction. I did not get an advanced copy. I emailed them. I asked them about an advanced copy. I didn't get one. I bought it. And then I bought this game. Do you know how many games I buy in a year? 3. I buy 3 games in a year. Maybe. Because I can't justify it because I'm, get review copies. Why am I buying games if I'm being sent more than I can play? But it was that important to me to try a new Terminator game, right? So I play it, and then 7 days after I bought the game, they're like, "Hey, would you like that review copy?" Thanks, guys, but you're a little late. What are you doing to me?
I don't understand. That's the one thing I will say that I think really did Resistance in at first was the marketing was really bad. Like, the early trailers make it look like it's a Call of Duty clone.
Not only were the trailers terrible, the marketing budget was nothing. Like, wrap your head around the idea that there was a new Terminator movie spending $75 million to advertise itself that came out 2 weeks before this game came out. And this game could not find a way to draft off of that press.
It makes no sense. I don't understand what was going on there. Especially when, even by comparison, the previous work by this developer, Rambo the video game, actually had a bigger press push, and that was an on-rails shooter that basically everyone shat upon.
I know. And then I finally played it, and you're going to hear a podcast about that one soon enough, and I'm like, oh, everyone was way too mean to this. It's fine. It's even, good in a bunch of places. But yeah, the critical reaction to this game makes no sense to me. It's a more focused story-based Fallout. It's Fallout without the open world nonsense. Except it's set in
the recent Wolfenstein games.
Exactly, yeah. It's like one of the recent Wolfenstein games, except this has more, it's got open world-esque design, so they're not open worlds, they're just, I think the closest comparison is something like Dishonored, where you're or Hitman, where there's this great big open area, and you have a bunch of objectives to complete in that area, and then the main story-based objective. Yeah, and so just go and figure out your way through it.
Yeah, typically when you discuss like that, I've heard that discussed in development circles, it's wide linear, and yeah, it does it marvelously. It
Oh yeah.
parses it beautifully, and I can't really imagine it any other way. Like, they could have just made this a generic open world game, and it would have been so much less interesting, because you would have had a bunch of just boilerplate objectives
Yep.
to make it all fit. Because it is very clearly on a budget, which is fine. Most games honestly do better when they are on an actual budget instead of just pie in the sky.
Yep.
But,
Anthem.
boy,
Sorry.
boy,
I should not have come in to take a cheap shot at your beloved Anthem.
boy.
That even you would admit that got away from them.
Well, it got away from itself because BioWare let no one basically have the reins for so long on almost any of their projects. It's almost like you need creative direction in this.
Could have guessed.
But
Please.
I would say that Terminator Resistance perfectly understands what it wants to be, and that is something that most studios struggle with these days, is what it actually is, this product. And Resistance clearly understands on every level what it wants to be, and it doesn't bother itself with trying to tie into Dark Fate. It doesn't even try to force in any other sort of things. There are references, there's all sorts of loving nods. I love the Wolfie joke that you can find.
I know.
It's so cute, and the kid's response when you suggest it is also just perfect. But, beyond that, it understands completely what its audience actually gives a damn about, and that's all it's concerned with, and that's...
Well, part of the reason it doesn't tie into Dark Fate, and I think this might factor into the problems tying in the marketing, is, of course, this game exists only because there are leftover Terminator 2 video game rights that were sold by Carol Co. back in the 90s that companies have just kept renewing for 30 years because the contract basically allowed them to renew them indefinitely.
Holy crap, I did not know this.
Yeah, this game was based on leftover Terminator 2 rights.
Which is why it only references up to Terminator 2.
Yeah, and it is literally like, so all those weird European Terminator games, or like the ones that were after Bethesda worked on Terminator, like a lot of those, so basically it turned out there were two branches of Terminator games. There were ones based on the old Terminator 2 rights, and they were the ones that kept getting made when the new games came coming out. But those Terminator 2 rights, because it was made by Carol Co., not like the various companies that took over afterwards, those never actually expired. So they're allowed to keep making Terminator and Terminator 2 games indefinitely, apparently, like unless a legal challenge stops them. But that's why you can't tie it into any of the later films.
And to be fair, they do actually come up with a really neat way with, are we going to be digging into spoiler territory, or is there
I think we should a little later on.
Okay, because, like, I just want to say then, there are moments in the game where it acknowledges all the time travel shenanigans.
Yeah.
And I'd go so far as to say it basically did what Genesis was hoping to do, but right. Like, it's like, okay, this just keeps happening. And we're not going to pretend that it's not happening, but we're also going to find a way to work around this.
Yes. And kind of a beautiful way.
Yeah.
I mean, this game has, not only is it a great, it's a really great shooter, right? It's a great tactical shooter. There's fun bosses. There's a really good variety of enemies. There's, I would say, an incredible stealth section.
Oh yeah, the bit when you're in the hospital. Oh yeah, that's
amazing. Like the Terminator soundtrack, the stomping of T-800 skeletons. Well, I mean, technically they're, I guess, T-200 because they're just the skeletons, but like stomping around. Right, the stomping around of the skeletons, knowing that you don't have plasma weapons yet, so you are literally incapable of hurting a Terminator at this point in the game. Damn.
Yeah. I want to just also say, I love that they made sure to make that distinction clear, because that's one of the weirdest issues with a lot of these run-and-hide horror games that have become popular over the last few years, like Outlast and that, is like, I'm okay with being disempowered, but have a good reason for it, and Terminator absolutely owns it. It's like, your weapons literally just cannot pierce that armor. Yeah. It's nothing to do with your skill. It's nothing to do with someone saying, oh, no, you just conveniently can't carry a hammer. No, you just legitimately cannot fight these things.
Well, and it's fascinating because like you play Outlast, and I'm like, when this guy's walking around in the dark, why can't I just crush his skull? There's hammers here, there's knives here, there's saws here, there's chairs and there's clubs. Like the giant military guy, okay, yeah, I probably couldn't take him in a fight, but the rest of these guys, yeah, just club them when they're not looking. But in Terminator, it's so great. And by the way, it's an interesting tie-in because this shows how much the developers care about the Terminator continuity and the Terminator tech. Because as a Terminator nerd, I can tell you that that is all accurate to how Terminators were originally conceived. Right? And so the idea is, in the entire movie Terminator, he doesn't actually get massively hurt until he's blown up at the end. He's fine, no matter how much he gets shot. The one thing that happens in Terminator, and it's this weird kind of sub thing, at one point a shotgun pellet gets jammed in the servos of his arm, and he has to take that out to make sure his hand works perfectly. But like all the times he gets shot in the face, no real damage. Shot in the chest, no real damage. It can stagger him, but it can't hurt him. What does happen is the heart, the blood supply in his heart gets damaged, and so his skin dies in the movie, which is why in the second half of the movie his skin is graying and starting to rot. It's because the actual living skin that is wrapped around a Terminator has died, and so he is essentially a zombie at that point of the movie. And that's how they show Terminators in this, as being like completely impervious to conventional weapons. But then when you get yourself a plasma rifle, well, no, you're a formidable foe who can take on a Terminator, because plasma rifles are Terminator weapons and they're your weapons too. It's great.
Oh yeah, and the way it. Sorry.
Totally.
But yeah, just the way they integrate a lot of the lore and answer questions that, like, that's another big issue with a lot of tie-in things. Is it's simply like, we're going to answer questions for you. Okay, but I didn't ever ask that question.
No.
That was never a question I ever had. Whereas Chain Resistance, like, no, we actually know what things you're probably wondering about, and we want to have answers for them. So here you go. Let's establish how X, Y, and Z lined up perfectly.
Yeah. Oh no, and I mean, it's like, it's made by people who really adore the series and love the continuity, and the thing that impressed me most is it's like, they knew what parts of it were ripe for that kind of exploration. Well, how does TechCom work? Like, I want to know about how this I want to know what the lives are like of the people who are stuck in these, refugee encampments. I want to know about, okay, what was it like being in the Terminator's experimentation and research labs? Like, what is Skynet? We've heard about Skynet taking human prisoners before and developing Terminators and blah, 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 blah. Well, now we hear stories and see evidence of what that was actually like. These key parts of the continuity and the series that they've never touched on at all in any of the movies and barely even referenced on that awful TV show. And now you got a game all about the most interesting parts of the future war. I mean, hell, they made a whole future war movie that didn't even get into this stuff.
Yeah, I feel like one of the other things that it really did benefit Resistance is because of every other sequel-y thing that has happened, they basically had a go-to guide of, okay, what don't we want to do? What is everything we should learn from? Because that's always my argument is, if you're going to work in any property, look at the worst things that have happened in it. Look at the worst pieces of fiction or tie-in material or whatever, and like, okay, we now know what not to do, because that's the most valuable lessons you're going to get. If you just try to copy whatever worked before, which is what pretty much every movie has tried to do, then you're not going to work so well. But if you find what's broken and figure out how to fix it, well, then you might actually have something.
Yep. Well, I mean, just like, John Connor doesn't have to be the main character of the series, like the movie. He's important to the series, but I don't actually need a movie about him. He can just be the distant leader of the human forces. I don't need to follow his journey around, wandering around the wasteland. Okay, it was fun that time he hacked a motorcycle and still had his Guns N' Roses tape. That was fun. but I didn't need a movie about that. Like, it's okay if he's a distant figure who you don't really run into, because you're just playing a soldier in this war. You're not like, it turns out you're a key figure, and the game builds a really interesting mystery. Okay, I think you probably figured it out immediately. I know I did.
Oh yeah, if you know anything about the series lore, you can call it out right away.
But yeah, and we'll talk about that later on in this podcast. But it's like, but there is like, whether or not you figured out right away, it's a well-structured mystery, because right at the beginning of the game, like, you, a random grunt, are targeted by Skynet. You're like, why is a random grunt being targeted by Skynet? I certainly don't have any information about that. And over the course of the game, you will get the information, and it pays off in a very satisfying fashion.
Mm-hmm. And I actually would argue that's one of the best things about mysteries. Just last week or so, I was writing a piece about, surprise and subverting expectations, and really, the best mysteries, you'll probably have figured out at least part of it way in advance, but that's fine. The point is to make it so that figuring it all out, knitting it all together, and getting every answer is still satisfying.
Yep.
And Terminator Resistance does that beautifully.
Yeah, like, I knew who the killer was in Knives Out immediately, but getting all of the pieces of the story to work are what makes that movie good. Like, it's not that it comes completely out of left field. It doesn't. It's that, no, every piece of the mystery and the exploration is satisfying, and it's the same thing here. I know why my character is being targeted right away, but going on that journey is what's satisfying about it. And I'm going to say it, it's a very well-written game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's some there's fantastic acting for a bunch of the characters. I was surprised by how much Aaron, because like there are so many old women in games who are not interesting, who are just annoying things. You don't often get a Granny Rags, and let alone someone like Aaron who's like, wow, you're being written as a person instead of a caricature. Is this what good writing in games feels like?
Yeah, sure. She has a ton of backstory. She's here for reasons. She has her own point of view on everything. Like, she is a fully rounded character. And as you said, how often do we get that? And the answer is not enough. Like, fundamentally, the answer is we don't get characters this well written enough in video games. And she's not like the main character. She's not even the second main character. She's just one of the people there. But everybody's got these great backstories that inform who they've become. And it's like, you find out, you meet them, you see what their attitudes are, you see what their worldviews are, and then you hear the stories that shape them into the people they are as you get to know them better. Like, it's structured in a traditional way, but, the standard structure allows the really good writing a place to shine, because it's a comforting structure that we've all seen in 100 video games, but the unusually good writing elevates it. So I was so happy with, oh god, I mean, her storyline is so good. The payoff for that.
Oh yeah.
By the way, my favorite moral choice in the game is like the end of her story.
Oh yeah, because it really is, despite what is technically what most people would consider the good outcome, it's like, is it?
Is it though?
And you never actually get to know, which is another valuable thing. Like, I've heard some people complain about the game because certain moral choices, you don't get to have an immense amount of closure. Okay, That's daily life.
I know.
Like, I really wish players would recognize that, often in our lives, we make a crap load of decisions. We influence a ton of people's lives that we don't know what the consequence is. If you're an absolute jackass to someone in a customer service position who didn't do anything wrong to you,
you might ruin their whole day, and that would have echo effects down the line.
Exactly. But you'll never see that. You're never going to know that because you're not, sitting there with them the rest of their day. And the same thing applies to all these different people you encounter in the Resistance and what have you.
Yeah.
Plus, by not obsessing about having constant, multiple variable end states, there's a lot more personality, like driving Alvin nuts with the radio boombox.
I know.
It's just perfect.
It is. By the time you played it, I'm sorry to report there was something completely broken in the combat. That they fixed in air quotes, but I loved. So originally, you get plasma weapons in the game relatively early, and then there's red plasma weapons, and then there's the more powerful violet plasma weapons. This is, of course, referencing the fact that in the movies, there are two different types of, plasma blasts you see. Because everything in this game, everything traces back to somewhere in the first two movies. It's, again, a brilliant piece of work. So there is a purple plasma sniper rifle, so an advanced plasma sniper rifle that is devastatingly powerful.
Oh, I know what one you mean, and yeah, it is so much fun to use.
And so when the game originally came out, it just took one cell of plasma power to fire it. So it cost the same to fire the plasma rifle as it did to fire the plasma assault rifle, which has, 1/4 the attack power. And it has a precision scope that makes it basically impossible to miss, even at long range. So it's the perfect weapon. They've changed it now, as you know, so that it costs like 5 or 10, some much larger amount of plasma energy to fire the sniper rifle. But originally, once you got the sniper rifle, there was no reason not to use the sniper rifle.
The thing is, I still pretty much use that predominantly for, like, the majority of the campaign. During the finale,
it's amazingly powerful.
Like, unless it was a close quarters situation or it was actually on the front lines and I couldn't just, conveniently ambush enemies, it's like, yeah, I don't know, why would I use anything else?
It's really good, because again, you can camp out, because of the wonderful way the game's levels are designed, you can actually climb up top of a building and peek out through a window and see Terminators in the distance and snipe them. Like, it's great. They've thought through, again, beautiful level design in this.
Oh my god.
Yeah, like, the intricate, all of the levels are meted out into sections, and every place where you can lock or unlock a thing, right? There are multiple ways to get through every area. There is, it's just like Dishonored. You can blow up a door, you can pick a lock, or you can use parkour nonsense to climb your way through every area in the game.
Mm-hmm.
There's always 3 ways to do everything.
And sometimes they, sprinkle in some wonderful world design, which is what I also want to just praise, because, like, I love that every single location you can distinctly recognize, oh, this is what this used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so many games where they just treat that part of the world design as unimportant, as something that no one's going to care about. But no, realizing, oh, I'm on a highway right next to a shopping mall plaza. Wow.
Yep.
The real world really has changed. Or recognizing that you're in suburbia and it looks more like you're trying to navigate bombed out, Propriat in Stalker.
And there's this whole point where you go to for reasons I'm not going to get into, you go to a country club, right? And like, the whole land leading up to it, suddenly you're not in a bombed out wasteland, that used to be a city anymore. Suddenly there's, like, trees that have overgrown all the roads, and, like, yeah, exactly. Like, it's a fully thought out location. Right? They really put into their head, well, we've only seen what Los Angeles looks like bombed out. What do the suburbs? The suburbs weren't nuked. Nobody nuked the suburbs. Why would they? So what do they look like? And they actually think this stuff through. Yeah, a lot of the houses are wrecked because there's been, fighting there. And, planes crashed, there's been fighting, but a surprising amount of stuff is still intact. Plenty has been looted, but, there were no nukes for Sherman Oaks, California. Nobody bothered nuking that place. So, yeah, everything's been looted, but it's still a real location, right? And, again, that's just one aspect of this game's fantastic level design. I was so happy. I didn't even mind returning to areas. And as you pointed out in your article, like, that's one of the places you really see the budget. Mm-hmm. You really see the budget limitations, is that a couple of times you'll go back to a place you've already been and have a new adventure there. And yeah, you can really see the budget limitations there. But honestly, I liked the locations so much. I was actually, I enjoyed these return trips because I was able to put my knowledge of the place to good use as I was fighting more difficult enemies there.
Oh yeah, no, and I do want to add, I wasn't even necessarily viewing that as a bad thing in of itself for one very keen reason, which is I really, really appreciate how several times they still felt distinctive. Like when you go back to downtown, where first you're, caught in all sorts of explosions and everything, and oh gosh, everything's going to hell, and then
Yeah.
you come back again and it's so eerily quiet. Like just hours before you were in this place, and it was absolutely insane.
Yeah. And I mean, you're right. Just by changing the context of an area, you could completely change how that area feels and how going there plays. Yeah, these guys, there is not the amount of work these guys put into the pacing of their, somewhat open world game is almost unheard of. Like, you don't see this much. Normally when somebody makes an open world game, basically all of the levels are pretty much just big playgrounds to do. Whereas this game, they're like, well, we're going to use the playground a couple of times. So one time you'll be there to explore. One time there'll be a giant gunfight that you'll be part of. One time it'll be swarming with Terminators and it becomes a stealth level essentially because you've got to keep your head down or you're going to get blown up immediately. Right? And they're using the same maps, but they're using them in such different ways. It's like a new experience every time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I mean, I adore this game. Hopefully I'm not gushing too much, because I think this thing is magnificent.
Oh, there's no question. If Days Gone had not come out in 2019, I would say that Terminator was easily the best 2019 game that came out. No question.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm with you on that one. I mean, I would put Days Gone over it. I agree with you on that one. But this thing is think of the way we treat licensed games generally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that this good a game that not only is a great game on its own, but manages to perfectly execute the vision of the source material it's based on. Again, it's up okay, I was going to say it's up there with Alien Isolation. What were you going to say are all-time classic games you can compare it to from the tie-in genre?
The best examples that I would get, Isolation is definitely up there. It absolutely hits that level of fan fervor. I would also call it just about as damn well ambitious as, and I know not everyone's going to be responding with, wait, you're saying that as a compliment, but it definitely has the level of ambition I typically would associate with only Amazing Spider-Man 2, which, for the record, if you haven't, it really does a lot of things with Spider-Man that I'm still just kind of amazed Activision let them get away with. I don't know how they got away with some of those things.
Yeah.
But there's that one absolutely, and I would say, and actually I think the other one I would say that is on that level. That is quite on this level of pure joy for the property and wanting to capitalize on it as much as possible while taking daring risks would be the Telltale Batman stuff.
Okay. I could agree with that one. Yeah.
Because, seriously, that is just, it's the same level of, okay, I know why we're all here. I completely and utterly understand why we're here. Let's make it fun. Let's make it good. Let's make it sane. Instead of just sitting back and just kind of going, okay, whatever. Here's your licensed property. Go nuts.
Yeah, do whatever. We know we're going to make X amount of money for putting out a Batman game, so let's just put out a Batman game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, how many Terminator video games have felt that way? Almost all of them. This is the only Terminator game that I've ever played. I mean, the first Terminator game, the one that was an open world cat and mouse game where you played either Kyle Reese or the Terminator, and you just had a 3D map of all of Los Angeles, and you just had to drive around and figure out how to play the game. that was more ambitious than this, but the technology did not exist to make that game the way they wanted to make that game, so it's just kind of remembered as a weird footnote. Whereas this, and I think this is the big takeaway from this, is these are people who, as you said, exactly know their limitations and how to work within them.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we're not going to have the graphics and giant environments and unlimited possibility of these huge budgeted games. So with the budget we have, what can we do? So limited maps, only so, like, and by the way, the Terminator, the genius of the fact that you only fight Terminators in the game means you don't have to spend a giant amount of money on enemy animations. Because Terminators are supposed to be stiff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they did such a clever job with that. And I know there are people like, well, I want my humans to be more accurately animated. And it's like, yeah.
The humans aren't the point of the game, dummy.
That is one thing I want to just address here. I don't try to directly call things out, but complaining about romance scenes in a Terminator game, just at that point, I have to question, are you actually sure why you're here? That still just bothers me. I'm not going to say specifically
So
who I'm referring to, but
they know
to
who they
this
are.
day, it just, I don't think that should be what your focus is. If that's your opening argument, you should have just handed the review copy over to someone else.
Yeah. How are you saying, well, the sex scenes aren't well animated enough? So what? Like, what on earth were you hoping to get out of a Terminator game? Weirdo? Like,
Yeah,
we're here to shoot Terminators. It also has a really good story, but tell me how good the Terminator shooting is. Don't tell me that the lack of, well done breast animations pulled you out of the world during a lovemaking scene. Like, dude, pick your battles.
Yeah.
So I could not believe it when you mentioned that you mentioned that to me.
I still can't believe it, but regardless, that's part of the reason why I was so eager to talk about Resistance. Like, this is really good, and I'm happy to say that unlike a lot of games we've had to discuss, like, if you've been following, we've been talking about Battleborn and stuff like that. A lot of these games that we like, a lot of these games that we enjoy, typically they do not get a proper shot at having the full blast that they could be.
Yeah.
But in this case, things actually turned around for Terminator. It has a very positive rating on Steam. It's getting well regarded. Teon is capitalizing on the positive press, and
they are. I mean, it's like I follow them on Twitter, and it's like they promote every review this game gets now. Like, they are. I'm blown away, but it's like they understand. Like, they have found their audience.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And I love that.
Oh, yeah, it's so incredibly earned, and it's just fantastic to see because they've earned it. Genuinely. Because as much as we both will say, Rambo the video game is perfectly fun, as, it's an on-rail shooter that clearly was made for the Wii. And which, by the way, I don't know if I told you that, apparently it was built for the Wii, so that's why the graphics weren't so amazing, and yet, ironically, that was the version that got canceled.
I'm blown. I mean, honestly, the fact that it was built for the Wii explains everything about that game.
Yeah. It's weird, but it's a tangent, so I won't go into it a ton here. But
we're doing a different Rambo podcast later, so don't worry about it.
But for this, just they put the work in with everything that I've found that Teon has done. Like, they put the work in, even when they were making other on-rail stuff like the Heavy Fire games and everything. Like, they were legitimately trying for something all the time, and they finally got big enough. It reminds me of Spiders, right? The RPG developer. Because Spiders did, when they first started out, their games were like 8 to 10 hours long at most, trying to capture the aesthetic of a BioWare game. Mm-hmm. And now they are the ones who are actually making big, grand-scale Western RPGs that are actiony, but also made for, people who love classic CRPGs. It's changed that much that now they're the ones doing it, while BioWare is the one focused mostly on online experiences. And
Yeah.
they've inherited that role beautifully. It's magnificent to see them accomplishing so much with that, and it's something that Teon is primed to do, because right now Bethesda is not really even that interested in being Bethesda. So now we have Obsidian basically planning to make their own Xbox Elder Scrolls, and now we have Teon set up to do the sort of stuff that the various Bethesda FPSs used to be like, and
Yep.
this could be amazing.
Well,
And
the thing is,
really
I'm going to say what I said the last time, which is, so I've been saying this about Terminator for the longest time, and what I've said was, there is no better, like, there is no better license to build a Fallout clone around than Terminator.
Mm.
Because of the built-in brand value, because the future war is such an interesting setting, and I know you said that skeptically, right? You were a little skeptical about that because it could so easily turn into, okay, well, here's your map populated with a bunch of places to go to do objectives, and it's this big empty world and no one lives there, and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, this isn't a full Fallout-style game, but there's a ton of that DNA in it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I really feel, as I was playing this, that if these guys got the ability and got the budget, these would be the guys to make Fallout Terminator.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no question. And that is one of the things that I will say that I'm loving about the rise of AA, is that we're seeing more games that are demonstrating, okay, this is how you do that thing that you used to like, but in a way that doesn't suck all the fun out of it. Because, like, when we talked about Vampire a while back, like,
A
there's
perfect example of AA kicking ass.
it does everything that you want from this sort of Bloodborne-esque, but also BioWare-esque experience, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't jam in any unnecessary stuff. It's focused entirely on what you want and just that. And that is what I think, at the end of the day, we are seeing now. Regardless of the fact that AA has smaller budgets, that also means it is focusing every one of those projects beautifully.
Yeah.
And I am so here for that.
Oh, no, I mean, like, Teon has proved itself to be again, I say out of nowhere, but they've had a ton of, like, rail shooter games out there. So it's like, they've been here for a while, but it's like, they have stepped up into the big leagues of AA developers with this game. And I'm sure they're working on something else right now.
Oh, no question.
And I don't know what it is, but I am desperate to find out, because I am, like, these are developers. How often do you get to say, these are developers I 100% trust for whatever they want to do next? Like, whatever they have in mind next, I'm there for it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, I am absolutely down for whatever these guys are planning. I don't want to get my expectations too high, but it's like, the fact that they've shown they can develop this caliber of game that's this faithful to the source material, the sky's the limit. Like, who knows what they could do if they had themselves a real budget. And of course, the problem is, getting a real budget means that an evil corporation might take you over and destroy you.
Look what happened to the... Don't you dare touch Teon.
I know. Well, look what happened to the... Oh my god, I was so disappointed when I heard about what happened to the Kerbal Space Force guys.
Yeah,
it's disgusting. They're like, well, we need more money to make Kerbal 2, so we'll let them buy us and fund Kerbal 2. They buy them, and then, like, a year later, something, they're like, oh, by the way, we're destroying your company, and we're keeping the rights to Kerbal 2, and we're hiring everybody to make Kerbal 2 for us instead. Later. Jesus. And I would hate to see something like that happen to Teon, because they have their own thing. So if they made any kind of a deal, I would hope it would be one that gave them some measure of independence. I mean, my dream situation, they find a way to hook up with Rebellion.
Oh, that would be marvelous, because Rebellion is just... Or Focus Home. I'd go to Focus Home.
Focus Home Interactive would be good, too. They seem relatively hands-off. But it's like, Rebellion are the guys out there making the coolest games, but they're doing it entirely on their own. And I would like to see them moving into publishing some equally good games. Because right now, they only pretty much, I think, publish the games they themselves actually make. and they don't let anybody else get their hands on those games. And I'm like, take that aesthetic, actually track down a developer who's doing great work, and use your big publishing apparatus that you've built for the Sniper Elite games, and use it to help somebody else as well. And now, what's the new one they're doing? The new Evil Genius.
Yeah, Evil Genius 2. They got that coming up very soon, actually.
Very excited about that one.
Oh, yes.
I loved Evil Genius back in the day. So yeah, I think we have made it absolutely clear that this is a magnificent experience that no one should miss. And that, like, if you haven't played, and by the way, I consider the best budget purchase I've ever made of a video game to be Earth Defense Force 2017, because it's Earth Defense Force 2017. It cost $20 on original release. That's madness. It's perfect. But I would consider this to be like my second favorite just budget game purchase of all time. Because the thing is, you might say, what about all those indies you love? Well, those are indie games. You know? Like, the difference is, a budget game is a game that exists within the AA, AAA sphere, but costs a fraction of what a full-price game costs, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's like when, I remember, what was the famous one? When they did that terrible 3D version of Narc. They're like, this isn't a very good game. It was supposed to be a AAA game, but we're just going to charge $20 for it and shove it out the door. Right? And that is the sphere in which Teon is working, where it's like, they are a AA developer, and they put out a budget-priced game. And this might be my favorite, like, just budget-priced game I've ever purchased.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, and that's the thing, I do want to emphasize, I also bought my copy, and I don't have any compunction with what I paid for it. It was absolutely worth it, and I am really stringent about spending money because I am on a really tight budget, and...
Well, had I been a smart person, I would have accepted their review copy a week later and given it to you, but I'm not a smart person, so that didn't happen.
It's all good, because I'm happy for where the money went. There's, like,
out of all the
games I've, like... I consider this almost like a cleansing action by comparison to when I pre-ordered BioShock Infinite, because I stupidly thought that BioShock Infinite would be the game advertised in 2010. Instead of the really weird and even in inexplicable ways racist and other-ist BioShock Infinite.
It's so racist! Who made that game?
That's a whole other conversation, but just, yeah, like, this, I'm happy that my money went to support this, that money will actually mean that, okay, Teon might actually get to make something else new. They might get to finally capitalize on the fact that people are taking them seriously, because that is one of the most valuable things for any kind of creator, especially...
That kind of cred, yeah. It's vital.
So hopefully they just latch onto that, they make it all their worth, all their while, and we get to see them make a ton more things, because they absolutely deserve to. And I understand you wanting to see more Terminator, but I also love that, I do want to emphasize here, if you're tired of sequelitis, this game has a very nice conclusion, or set of conclusions, actually, that they feel like a nice definitive...
Sorry, I want to make this absolutely clear. If they were to make... Terminator open world Terminator Fallout, I would not want it to be a sequel to this game.
Yeah, Jacob following story is just
I would want it to be stories from the future war wasteland. Mm-hmm. Hell, do you know what would be fun? Set it in Australia or South America. The parts of the future war we've never really seen.
Yeah, I don't understand why we haven't seen anything. I'll also throw in one other one because of the mentioning of Wolfenstein, actually. Yeah. Why have we not seen, a game about, fighting off oppression set in Africa? Like, I understand you need to be careful and wise about that, but just, like, actually consult people who can make sure that you don't do anything yikes, and then boom! You have something that we've basically seen no one do, and that just is screaming for it to happen.
Well, and this is why, Africa, South America, like I said, even Australia, because, and this is, again, I'm a Terminator nerd, so I can drop this bit of science. In the script for Terminator 2, he mentions a fact that, like, did not really get played up in the movie, and I'm really sad about that. That, like, 80% of the future army of TechCom is supposed to be black and brown people, for the simple reason that only the Northern Hemisphere got nuked on Judgment Day. On Judgment Day, when the Russians were killing Americans and the Americans were killing Russians and Europe was getting blown up, nobody bombed Australia, Africa, and South America. So those are like the most of the people fighting in the current war. And that is one of the many pieces of Terminator trivia that I would be interested in seeing them, stretch out. The second is the origin of the T-1000, which is the best backstory a character has ever had, but we can't get into it now because it would take forever.
I'm just loving to see you get to nerd out about lore for once, because I know that typically I'm the one just chewing
That's your job, because of our Star Trek thing, I know. No, I'm just nuts for Terminator. I love it, and I hate that there's never been a good Terminator product since Terminator 2. Until now.
Yes!
Alright, so this is going to be the end of the traditional thing. Now we're going to spend about 10 minutes talking about spoilers and how much we love the story. So if you haven't played the game yet, go play it now.
Yeah, I think we've made a thorough argument.
I can't imagine we have left any holes for you to, push skepticism through. You're gonna love this game. I don't know anyone who's played it who doesn't love this game. So just trust us, go and have a great time. Now, for people who've already seen it, let's talk about some of the plot stuff. So I'm just gonna say it. Best handling of time travel paradox I've seen in ages.
I love that they actually leave you with a choice at the end for that, because I was so expecting, they're not going to let me decide. It's going to be set in stone. It's like, no.
No?
No, you actually get a choice. It's the, it's a complete inverse of, what they try to do with Singularity.
Yep. Yeah, it's not a causality loop. That's the genius thing. They're like, no, it's not a causality loop. If you go back and become the stranger, the story is going to play out differently. Because it's not a causality loop. So the first time this all happened, right? The first time this all happened, they wrecked Skynet, and Skynet sent a Terminator back, and they sent, because you're the guy who happened to find out where where Skynet's defense grid was. You're the random guy who found that out the first time through. So Skynet, when it was sending back Terminators to kill John Connor, just in case, sent a Terminator back to kill the guy who found out where the defense grid was. Because, if the John Connor stuff didn't work out, well, we'll stop them from finding the defense grid and saved ourselves. So then you get sent back to save yourself, because a Terminator has been sent to kill you. And then at the end of the game, and this is what I love, if you choose to go back, you go back with knowledge that the future you, the you who was the stranger, and this is complicated to talk about because it's time travel, but the stranger didn't have all of the information about how Terminators work that you have. You have learned new things, and you are going to do a better job being the stranger than the stranger did.
Also, I just want to point out here, I love that John Connor is like, look, dude, I've been dealing with this across so many lifetimes. I just know how this works.
You just have to trust me on this.
Yes!
How perfect is that?
It beautifully acknowledges, we have 6 different timelines now across how many different movies. Let's just acknowledge that, everything is a different timeline. Boom! We've solved our continuity problem.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Just go with it. They said no. They came down hard on how time travel works. They were willing to commit to how time travel works for once. And just say, no, these are the rules. There are set rules. This is what they are. All right, great. Everybody on board? Let's get going then. How amazing is that?
Mm-hmm. Getting around so many issues in one sentence is just, it's a thing of beauty. It truly expresses, yes, this was made by people who know this franchise and also know everyone else who is in love with this franchise who wants something to make sense.
Well, but they trust the fans to be on board.
Yeah.
I think that's what I liked most about it, is they trust the fans to hear an explanation, accept the explanation, be like, all right, now let's get on with the story. They expect, no, we're here to have fun. We're not here to nitpick. We're not here to we didn't come to this game to have a bad time. We came here to enjoy ourselves. So if you're going to give us an excuse to just enjoy ourselves, we're going to take it. And that's what they do with the time travel explanation.
Mm-hmm.
No, I love this game. Super intense backstories, though.
Oh my gosh, yeah, everybody has so much, but it makes sense. Everyone is essentially a war veteran of, the most advanced cyber holocaust to have ever happened. So it makes sense that everyone's handling it in their own ways. And
Yep.
I love that the stories aren't just, and Skynet did this to me. I will say I am a little bit annoyed that rape as a backstory is a thing that happens with your commander. I really feel like Baron didn't need that. Like,
no.
She had enough awful things already happen to her.
But yeah, to also have her be exploited by a human traitor to Skynet, that was rough. It might have been going a little too far, but I don't think it's handled in an extremely exploitative way. I think it is handled... I think it's an attempt to be realistic, and they handled it as sensitively as they could, and it's not like she's ever weakened or questioned as a character.
Oh yeah, it's just a thing that you can find out as a random thing. It's not something they jam in your face. It's not anything that just beats you over the head. But
absolutely,
I still for me personally, it's like whenever I am writing anything, one of my main rules is I never want that in my stories.
Oh no, I'm a 100% with you on that front. I agree with you 100%. I don't think it breaks her character of the game, but I agree with you that it wasn't necessary at all. Like, I completely agree with that.
I do, however, just love Jennifer's story and the exploration of, through hearing about how it happened to her father.
Oh my God.
Like, it explores way more than just the simple matter of her journey, but it explores what happens to an idealist in these kind of situations. Because usually, you either see an idealist just be an idiot the entire way through, or they turn into this mustache-twirling villain where it's like, no, this is a real descent into darkness that her entire family underwent.
And I mean, it's such a well done. Great use of notes in that storyline, too. Not only notes, but you can, find all of if you fully search their house, you can find all of the evidence and know exactly what happened before she's willing to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
And again, that's just good environmental storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, then again, there's no part of this game that isn't good.
I did actually... There is one issue.
Oh, sorry. What is the one issue you had? I shouldn't have assumed you were with me.
Boss fight glitched for me.
Oh, no, really?
Legs became... they became very permeable if you were an enemy. So I had enemy drones flying through it.
Ew.
Which made that boss fight just a little bit more difficult.
No, that would be annoying. I completely understand that.
I do want to cite here that it's the one glitch I had, and also I love that they have a note referencing the psychologist from the first two movies.
I know! Dr. Silverman gets mentioned! How great was that?
Oh, I know. I was telling my dad about the game, because I understand he was a big Terminator fan back in the day
he's he's a fan too. There you
go. So it's he's hearing this this sounds like a love letter. This sounds just absolutely perfect. And I'm like, yeah, you would like to actually play this. This is one that I think whenever he gets to get home, he'll probably be eagerly trying out, because...
No, but I can't believe we hadn't come to that term before, but you're right. This is a love letter to Terminator that manages to not... And this is what makes it so perfect. Again, I say perfect, I'm being hyperbolic, I get it. What makes it so amazing is that it is a love letter that isn't just fan fiction, that manages to meaningfully add to the world and have its own identity as a piece of Terminator art. It's operating in that world, but it has its own character too. It's not just using stuff from Terminator, remixing stuff from Terminator 1 and 2. It does have its own story to tell within that world.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that is another crucial thing that a lot of licensed tie-in fic these days has a problem with, where it's just oh, look at how cute I'm being. I referenced that name. It's
I know.
Yeah, you can't just say a name and that makes it meaningful. That's one of my biggest issues, actually, with modern Star Wars, is that oftentimes it's we referenced a person and we killed that character off too. And it's okay, what was the point then?
Yeah.
Well, there's so much stuff where it's I don't think you even understand how fan service works at that point. And that is the thing, Terminator Resistance is full of fan service, absolutely, but it's never just fan service, it's also in service to the narrative. If you aren't serving both, then you aren't really doing what you're aiming for.
Wow. No, you're totally right. That's exactly it. Oh, love it so much. No, I mean, this is, I can't stress enough, this is one of my favorite games, maybe okay. I didn't play Days Gone last year, though. I started playing Days Gone in February of this year, so... I mean, I bought Days Gone the day it came out, I just didn't get around to playing it for, 10 months. For no reason. No, for good reason. I didn't... Well, I mean, in my defense, okay, my PlayStation disk drive broke.
Sounds so generic.
Yeah, that's true. No, but also, it is actually true that my PlayStation's disk drive broke, and I did buy it on a disc. So it took me a while, and for a while I didn't bother loading it up because I was worried about performance issues, because I replaced my PlayStation, I bought a new one just so I could play Girls and Panzer. That's how much I love Girls and Panzer. So I just bought a slim PlayStation. I was worried it wouldn't be powerful enough for Days Gone and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I don't have a good excuse for not playing it that long, but I shouldn't have waited the way I did. And what I'll say is, yeah, it was better than Terminator Resistance, but it's not to such an extent that it blows it away out of the water. And no. Terminator Resistance is absolutely one of the best games of 2019.
Both of these games can absolutely exist in the same sphere.
If you're talking first-person shooters, it's the best game of 2019. Done.
Oh, there's no question. We're not even talking about Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. That didn't happen. That was just a dream that someone had. No, correction, not a dream. That was a nightmare that existed in someone's head. It wasn't mine. It never happened. Wolfenstein New Order just sadly never had a sequel. And, we just go on, it's like how we never got an Avatar: The Last Airbender live action movie. It just never happened.
I know. Sad that they never got around to doing that. Spent all that money developing it and then it just never came out.
That just never happened.
All right, so I guess what we're trying to say is it really is something special, right? Mm-hmm. It is a special experience, the likes of which we just don't get enough of. Do you have some final thoughts before we go?
I will say one thing that I think fully, because I still completely argue that Terminator 2 is easily one of the best sequels and easily one of the best.
It's a perfect sequel in every way.
It is. I remember
I agree with you completely.
Someone was debating with me about whether it was Terminator 2 or Aliens. It's like, Aliens is good.
I think Terminator 2 is the better sequel. Yeah.
It is excellent. There aren't any gripes anyone should have with it. And I really feel like this is the perfect bookend. That's part of the reason why I said, I don't necessarily need to
want them to come back to Terminator. Yeah,
I would love to see them come to another IP and do this again. I'd love to see that kind of thing. That's always a thing for me, is okay, you did a really great job with this. Okay, take that and go somewhere else. That's why I with Shadow of Mordor, my response was, no, don't try to turn this into a franchise. Have Monolith handle other things in this setting, or have Monolith handle other IPs that you've got right now. Don't just shoehorn yourself. And that is my one bit of what I hope for Teon, is that they get to really stretch their creative muscles, because clearly they know what the hell they're doing. Clearly they understand it, and they've been practicing it for years, and they have been ready for this. So let's see them really get to stretch their everything going on.
Well, they would be the perfect people to make my dream project, but I'm not going to say what that dream project is, because it is way too politically incorrect to mention. I'll tell you about it later, but It's these guys and their understanding, their love of Rambo, their love of this kind of fiction, they're great dealing with a Resistance style storyline. I have a video game that I would love to see, that I think would be healthy for the world, but because I've been saying to you for a while that it's why isn't there a Rambo open world game? And the real answer is, Rambo is set in the real world, so it's impossible to do a Rambo open world military game without it getting kind of super racist.
Oh, there's a lot.
There's no way they couldn't, and so that's why you can't make that game. But I have my own pitch, and that's a whole other story. But anyway, so
I forgive me. Go. Realistically, if you have been wanting closure, because that's one thing I totally get. As I was saying, as a frustrated Star Wars fan, I understand wanting closure, wanting to be able to just say, okay, the story is complete and it feels like it was finished properly.
Yeah.
This game did that for me for Terminator. After all the weird spin-offs, all the things that's like, well, I can see what you're going for there, but it didn't come together and what have you. This one just delivered. It is exactly what I would want from a nice conclusion, because it's effectively a prequel and a sequel. It does all of the things you'd want from both of those. It never feels ham-fisted in like so many, like, there's constant jokes about how, like, horror movies and stuff like that, and Terminator is sometimes regarded as horror, is like, when they have the inevitable prequel one and it's terrible. It's like, no,
Yeah.
this one just delivers everything that you want. It ties everything off with a bow, and it feels like one cohesive story. And
it's beautiful.
It is fundamentally a beautiful piece of work. Just excellent.
All right. So yes, we're going to wrap this up here. You're going to join us back here in a couple of weeks where we're going to be talking. Well, before then, we're going to be playing more Battleborn because we have to get through that before it goes away. But we'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk Rambo as well, Taon's previous game that not as good as Terminator by any means, but incredibly interesting in its own right.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely going to be a fun one to come back for. But on a bridge, what should people go and check out of yours?
Well, you can always find me at The Escapist under Second Look. Every week I take a look at some obscure, odd, or divisive game and offer a crazy take, and sometimes I send my editor's blood pressure rising by talking about Rambo the video game, or, Too Human. And,
Too Human, great article, by the way. Thumbs up emoji on that one. But, very happy with how that one turned out.
It was crazy because it's like everyone voted for me to talk about Too Human. Okay, then. This is going to be a thing. This will end well. But you can also find me on YouTube as The Unabridged Gamer, and there will be some new stuff coming up very soon. I know I've been saying that for a while, but I mean it, like, things are finally coming
percolating.
together. Yes, more than percolating. They are already at full boil, and they should be finally ready to be served soon as I am able, and soon as things in my house stop breaking.
Hey, you know what? At least it's not your computer breaking, knock on wood.
Yeah, don't even say things like that out loud right now.
Yeah, well, it's just you already went through that, so I'm, keep my fingers crossed fate isn't going to Nixon you twice. But you're right, I should not tempt fate. Anyway, I've been the Hidden Object Guru. Thanks for being with us through this podcast. We will see you back here for more, but until then, I'm going to say that's right. Au revoir.